how my dad died, reincarnated, disappeared, died again, reincarnated, was found, but not located. How are you guys doing? I hope you guys are doing great today. Today I have a pretty fun video. It's not that much fun, but anybody who knows me knows I love to cope with humor. My trauma is humorous to me because, you know, I'm a medicated baddie, so I could talk about it now. But today's video is inspired by Efren. Efren is a good friend of mine who I went to high school with, and I just love Efren. He also creates videos on TikTok, and I love his content. You guys should check him out. On Father's Day, Efren posted a video where he talked about his relationship with his dad and, you know, growing up with him. And I thought, why not share my story? So get your chips, get your palomitas, get your cobijita, get your coca, get your jarritos, and get ready for today. Sorry, I'm changing because that one was a little dirty. But get ready with me while I tell you this story. And also, I put my mic on here because it looked a little off when it was on me. But yeah, this is what we're working with today. So today I'm going to tell you guys the story about how my dad died, reincarnated, and disappeared on me. Okay, guys. So growing up, I was the youngest of 5. I have 4 older siblings, and I'm the youngest one, and there's a 10-year age gap between, no, 7 years, I'm sorry. There's a 7-year age gap between the last child and myself. I have my oldest brother who is 37. My sister is 35, turning 36. And then I have my twin brothers who are 32, I believe, and then myself, which is 26. Yeah. So this story begins when I was conceived. I was born May 22nd, 2000. So take that back 7 months. I was conceived possibly late October, early November, if we do the math right. That's when I was conceived. So yeah, the story begins with my mom not knowing she was pregnant. Yeah, apparently. This is all alleged because I can never get a clear story out of her. Mom, if you're watching this, I love you. I'm just using this as humor and entertainment. Yeah, don't get defensive. It's just a story. Oh, I'm gonna ruffle up some feathers here, but fuck it, it's my truth. Fuck it. So my mom claims she never knew she was pregnant by me, and one day she went to the you see, one day she went to the ER because she had a really bad stomach ache, and I was a stomach ache. It was a stomach ache. I know. From what I've heard from my older siblings, my sister's the only one that really ever talks to me about it. But she says that my mom literally went to the hospital, and then a couple of days later came home with a baby. So I'm gonna take my sister's word for it and say my mom didn't know. But that is how I came into the picture. So growing up, before I was even born, my mom was already a single mom, and there was no present father figure in her life. Or I never really questioned anything about my dad because at a young age, I never really, how would I explain it? I needed a dad, but I never really felt like he was missing from the picture just because I was raised around women that were single moms, and I never really seen the need for a father. So I never questioned where my dad was, who my dad was, or anything of that sense. You know, even in school, growing up, a lot of my friends didn't have dads. So it wasn't something that I seen very common around me, so I never really questioned it. But I will say the first time I ever actually questioned it, this is going to be really sad, you guys. It was my 8th birthday. It was my 8th birthday because it was the year before my uncle passed away. It was my 8th birthday. I remember sitting at the table. They were singing happy birthday. And I was just sitting there in front of everybody, and you thought I was gonna cry. I remember singing happy birthday and looking around, and the first thing that just came to my head was, I wish I had a dad. I remember I was sitting there and I was like, I wish I had a dad. And when I blew out my candles that year, my wish was to have a dad. Yeah, I was maybe around 10, and I asked my mom about my dad, and I remember the first time I ever asked, oh, he died. Change the subject. He died. I was like, oh, okay. That was my response. She always said, oh, he's dead. He's dead. He died. He died. And that was what I knew of my dad anytime I questioned it. And then as I got older, I believe around 16, that's when I really started struggling with my own mental health. It was very dark, and I remember that being a subject and me asking my mom, what can you tell me about my dad? Like, how did he die? Just because I felt like I was more emotionally mature to understand the whole truth. And all she told me was he went to Mexico and he died. So that was my impression on who my dad was and any type of luck I would have had for him. Okay, so when I was 18, I was officially officially not living at home anymore. This is when I was living with my uncle and my aunt because there was some stuff that had happened at home. And yeah, my uncle and my aunt took me in. So I was living with them, and around this time, this was the first time I ever felt like I had a paternal figure. Is that what it would say? This was the first time I ever seen a man around me act like a father. And I will say that living there with him caused some curiosity in my head just because I seen him as a dad. And that's when in my head I was like, what else can I know about my dad? Like, what other information would I know? Like, even if he is dead, I want to know a name. I want to know what he looks like because, curiosity killed the cat. Is that how you say it? I was just curious. So, this is when I got harder on my mom about knowing a couple more details. And let's just say it was not a pleasant conversation. Anytime that this conversation is brought up to this day, it is something that we don't talk about. Oh, you guys, there's something that I didn't tell y'all. This is a little twist in the story. Okay, so when I was like 10, one day I was at school and my sister picked me up early. I didn't know why she picked me up early, but let's just say I had always heard my mom talk about this one specific guy and say he was my dad, but I never took her serious because it was something I could never talk to her about. But his name was Charro. I'm gonna say his name because I don't care and I'm not afraid of him or his wife or his kids. I'm grown. I don't need you and I don't care. So, when I think I was in fifth grade, my sister picked me up and she said, someone's here to see you. So I remember going to the car, driving to my house, and when I got there, there was a tall man with a hat. And when I seen him, I didn't know who he was, but I don't know, I got a sensation that maybe I knew him and I don't know. I don't know. And I remember my mom saying, "This is your dad. This is your dad." So I honestly thought this man was my dad. Um, I remember as soon as I seen him and my mom were talking about, oh yeah, when you were born and saying stories of this and that. And I don't know. It was like, I feel like now that I'm older, I think about it, I'm like, why would my mom do that? That's very confusing for a child. Even if that was my father, like she claimed he was, I honestly think a conversation could have happened prior to me meeting him. It could have been a conversation. So my mom just threw it on me in front of him and said, "Oh yeah, this is your dad." So obviously I thought he was my dad. Um, I remember that same day. He gave my mom money. He took us shopping and it was a whole shopping spree. So in that moment, as a kid who doesn't have a dad, this was very confusing, as I may say. I believe, yeah, it was confusing. I was like, oh my god, I have a dad, I have a dad. I was excited. He was buying me everything I wanted. He was telling me everything I wanted to hear. And for many years, I thought this was my dad. He would come in and out every couple of years, and that was that. There was never really anything else. No relationship. I will say that when I seen him, he definitely tried to buy my love. And I will say, him and my mom were definitely acting like mother and father, if I must say so. A couple of years later, I think I was like 15. I was a freshman in high school. And I would talk to him every once in a while. He would call me, check in on me. And then one day I called him and a woman answered. And when she answered, she told me to stop calling his number, that he wasn't my dad, that he was her husband, and he had no reason to talk to me. So I think you could imagine how that would feel on a child. So I was under the impression that he wasn't my dad anymore. So I was back to square one when I was like, who's my dad? I was just confused. Yeah, so that was that as far as, that man in my story. It really hurt because my mom would say he was my dad, and I remember her making jokes and saying he wasn't my dad, but I never really knew. But now that I know, I feel like, in a way, my mom, from what I've been told, is she dated him whenever she was pregnant. I was already in her tummy, and he knew, and he took me in as his own. But then again, it kind of contradicts her previous story where she said she didn't know she was pregnant, and certain things happened in her pregnancy because she didn't know she was pregnant. But it's too many he said, she said, too many stories, and unfortunately I'm not in a position where I can ask her, because anytime I try to ask her, it becomes very, I don't know, it's a tough subject. She shuts down, and I'm not getting anything out of her in that case, in that situation, you know what I mean? So that was that. But like, going back to when I'm older, when I'm living with my uncle, this is like the first time I see a paternal figure around me. I see, what a father should be. I obviously get really curious at this time, and I'm like, what really did happen? And then I tried talking to my mom about it once again, and she shut down. She didn't want to talk about it. She didn't want to hear it. And to this day, it's still the same thing. For my 18th birthday, 19th birthday, I was 19, I bought myself a little gift. And what was that gift, you must ask? I bought myself a Ancestry kit. This is getting juicy, y'all. Let me blend this out and I'll be right back. Okay, y'all. So I bought myself a Ancestry kit. So what I did was, I took the kit, sent my saliva, sent the sample they needed, and, waited for results. I was in this time, I remember thinking, I'm not gonna tell my mom because I really didn't tell people because I was embarrassed. Like, in a way, I was embarrassed because I was like, why is it that I have to go through to this extent to find out anything about where I come from? Like, that's honestly embarrassing. As I got older, I started making friends that had fathers, and it was embarrassing to me because in a way, to this day, I still get a little embarrassed when I talk about it, just because I feel like, was I not enough in a sense? Like, am I not worthy enough to have a dad? Like, do I not deserve that? So yeah. um but I remember I wasn't going to talk to my mom about it until one day I got really emotional, and I was with her because she had a situation where my grandma told her my grandpa died, from what she said, and then a couple years later she found out he hadn't died, reconnected with her siblings, and then they told her, okay, yeah, he didn't die when your mom told you, but he died a couple of years ago. And that was a time where my mom was very like sad, and I remember her being upset with my grandma about it because she kept saying my mom took my dad from me. And in a sense, I felt like she was doing the same to me. She told me my dad died and didn't give me an explanation. So that's that. Um, when I did do the test, I ultimately, one time she was venting about my grandma and I got really upset. And I told her, hey, mom, I did this test, just so you know. Um, Rude. I told her, I did this test, just so you know. I should be getting some results soon. If you want to talk about it, if there's anything you want to tell me. So yeah, I told mom, hey, this is coming. If there's anything you want to tell me, now's the time. I would hate for you to not have the opportunity, as if she didn't have them for the previous 18 years, to tell me anything I need to know, just in case, you know, something pops up. She said, no, there's nothing I need to tell you. So that was that. And then when I got the results, I remember the first person I called was my mom. Um, and I told her, Mom, I got my DNA results. Are you available to talk? And before I even started, she said, actually, I need you to know your dad did not die. He was deported. Apparently, he was working at this restaurant here in Dallas. Apparently, it was a restaurant called Ojedas. And she met him there. He was drunk, apparently, according to her, but I can't take her word. He got deported, sent to Mexico, and then that was the last she heard from him. And then, in my head, my first question was, Mom, did he know about me? And she says, no, he didn't know. He actually, when he got deported, I called his brother, talked to his brother, and told him about you, but I didn't see why you needed him in your life. What was he going to do for you from Mexico? What was he going to do for me from Mexico? Yeah. What was he going to do? I don't know. Probably, even if it wasn't financially or emotionally, I was going to have a father. But no one's ready for that conversation. Of course, her telling me this makes me open up my test, my ancestry results, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna find my dad finally. I'm gonna have some type of answer. I'm gonna find him. Only I didn't. If anybody doesn't really know how ancestry works, you are connected with family or anyone who shares genetics with you only if they test, and only if they choose to share the results. So unfortunately, I did not find my dad. Didn't happen. I did find people I was related to. However, whenever I finally got the name from her, what his name was, and I tried to connect with these people, all of them said, oh, we don't know him. We don't know who he is. Are you sure you have the right name? So in my head, because of all the lies that I've been told in the past, my question is that even his name? Does this story have any type of truth behind it? It was October of 2025. My mom called me and said, hey, I found your dad's best friend, brother, something along those lines, and this is his number. So what did I do? I texted him. Let me tell you guys what I told him. Buenos días. I'm not going to say his name. Espero que este mensaje te encuentre bien. Mi nombre es Bibiana y recientemente me enteré de que después de tener una conexión, que usted puede tener una conexión con mi padre. Soy hija de Maria. My mom's name is Maria. I haven't had the opportunity. I'm trying to translate it for you. No he tenido la oportunidad de conocerlo y he sentido curiosidad de saber más sobre él y posiblemente conectarme. Entiendo si esto es inesperado y quiero asegurarles que no busco nada más que ponerle rostro a su nombre y conocer mis raíces. Si es posible, agradecería cualquier ayuda que pudiera brindarme para ayudarme a establecer una conexión. Entiendo que usted le dijo a mi mamá que él tiene... Oh, this I didn't tell y'all. My mom apparently had reached out to him before she even gave me his number, and he told her, "No, I'm not going to help you. He has a wife and kids in Mexico, and he redid his life, and she's only going to disrupt his life. He doesn't need her." Yeah, and what did my dumbass do? I still tried to reach out. So I said, entiendo que usted le dijo a mi mamá que él tiene esposa y hijos, pero solo quiero que sepa usted que no quiero interferir en su vida. Si usted quiere conectarme con él, puede contarle sobre mí. Estoy rogando por saber algo por él. I'm begging you, in other words. Durante los últimos 5 años lo he estado buscando. He gastado miles de dólares en pruebas de ADN. I meant to say hundreds, not thousands. I pretty much said, hey, I've spent hundreds of dollars trying to find him to DNA kits and I can't find him. I said, por favor, póngase en mi lugar. Odio involucrarte, pero eres mi única esperanza. No quiero morir sin conocerlo o que él sepa de mí. No necesito nada de él. Tengo 23 años y trabajo y no le pido nada. This was when I was 23. This was 3 years ago. Estoy financieramente estable y hago por mí mismo. Esto es algo que he necesitado para mi propia vida. Gracias por tomarse el tiempo de leer este mensaje y espero tener noticias suyas prontos, perdón. And then I said, Bibiana. That was February 19, 2024. No answer. October 18, 2024. I resent the message. And that was when I told you guys that I had talked to him on the phone. So this was October 19, 2024. He said, "Hi, hola, disculpa, yo no sé nada. Esta investiga por a otro lado." So he said, "I don't know anything. Find out another way." And I said, "No sé cómo, pero gracias." I said, "I don't know how, but thank you." And then I remember we were at a haunted house this day. We were out for my niece's birthday and I received a call. And when I received a call, it was him. And he sounded drunk and he started talking to me. And he acknowledged that he knew who he was and told me a little bit about him. And then he asked me to send him a picture of myself. And I did. And then it turns out that he was only going to share information about my dad to me if I shared information about one of my friends that he used to hook up with back in the day. So pretty much what I got from it was, I'm only going to tell you if you give me your mom's friend's number, because they used to hook up back in the day. So apparently him and my mom's friend hooked up. My dad and my mom would hook up and they were all like a little crew. But that was the only way I was going to get anything. That was October 19, 2024. He called me a couple of days after, drunk, asking for her number again, and I didn't send it. And I left it at that. So that is currently where I stand. I'm constantly looking for him on Ancestry, on 21andMe, and I can't find him. I've looked for him on Facebook, can't find him. All I know is his first name, last name, and that he worked at Ojeras in Dallas. And apparently his whole family worked at that restaurant. But I can't get a hold of anybody. I don't know who to get a hold of. And at this point, I don't need him. I'm just curious. Okay, guys, so that is the end of my story, and that is kind of where I'm at right now. I have come to the conclusion that I'm not going to find him. I don't know anything about him. I'm never going to know anything about him. I'm pretty sure he knows I exist, because obviously if I was to know that one of my sisters had a kid, or my sister and my brother had a kid, I would immediately call them and let them know what was going on. So there's no way he can say he doesn't know I exist. But I've come to accept that I don't need him. I've got this far along without him. And sometimes your father is not the person who made you or created you, but it's the person who's raised you. And I can proudly say that my uncle has done that, and he will continue to do that because he has such a big heart and I love him so much. And yeah, that's kind of the story of how my dad died, reincarnated, disappeared, died again, reincarnated, was found, but not located. And that's where we stand today.
Well, that's my life. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I hope you enjoyed it, because